Today I will be talking a little bit about the composer Alexina Louie and specifically a little piece from the collection Small Beautiful Things called Little Sparrows. So she is, well, probably one of the most sought after, famous living Canadian composers. She is a pianist, teacher, and composer, and began learning piano when she was young, around the age of 7. And she went on to study music history, piano, and composition at the University of British Columbia. She also went on to study at the University of California at San Diego, and one of her teachers there was actually the famous composer Pauline Oliveros. And that goes on some of the contemporary kind of techniques and stuff that goes to influence some of her music. Includes electronic pieces too, though that doesn't show up in the piece we're going to look at today. She also studied Asian music and traditional Chinese music specifically, which also contribute some influence to her compositions. So there's kind of, you can find a blend of these more avant-garde techniques as well as some electronic works with a traditional classical form, specifically classical Western form, with also these influences of some traditional Western classical music and musical styles mostly concentrated in East Asia, but also just some influences from different kinds of Asian music. For example, gamelan. And she's received many awards and honors that I feel it would be strange if I just listed all of them. She's also the founding director of an orchestra, and I just think it's inspiring to include living composers with the repertoire you're assigning your students. I think it's inspiring to know like what people who are of our world that we grew up in, people you could meet, are creating, and I think that's inspiring to know as a young person, and for children to know that, hey, this is something you can do too, and this is music you can play. And there's also a lot of variety in the music she's written. She's had orchestral output as well as for many solo instruments, operas, ballets, vocal, choral, and for different kinds of ensembles. She's also worked on some film scores as well, which is very cool. So, Little Sparrows, and this is a collection of pieces written for young piano students, but I also think it would work well for adult students because I just find them very charming. And I mean, the appreciation of nature can extend to adults. I think that's also a mature thing, a mature theme, but it's also suitable to young students. And so many of the titles of these miniatures are inspired by nature. The ones that aren't necessarily are also dynamic scenes. So for example, someone running to catch the bus. So there's kind of movement involved. Even with little sparrows, you can imagine the chirping or the flying, the fluttering of wings. And the RCM syllabus lists this as level 5. I think most of the pieces in this collection are included somewhere on the RCM syllabus. They're not all in the same level, but this one in particular is considered level 5. So I also wanted to go over quickly these kind of, pedagogical aspects, but these things to look out for in the music. So I just included a little snippets here of showing how this is a good piece, especially for young students, to connect imagery or just animals, outside concepts with music. And so, of course, since it's about sparrows, we'll see things like bird calls and chirping. And I think these all sort of demonstrate that this is like ba-da-da-da-dum. It kind of sounds like a whistle of a bird. These, it's a dissonant, all broken clusters here, which kind of sound like multiple birds chirping at the same time. And here, measure 15, it just directly says that it should be played bird-like. And it's also not traditionally tonal. If you're assigning like Clementi, Sonatinus and stuff, Bach, and all the regular beginner standards, I feel tend more towards earlier music when I was learning piano. I think this is really good to introduce students to not just that like tonal Western classical Mozart kind of style. At the beginning, we also see the incorporation of whole tone scale, so those are things you can point out. Also, learning a little bit theoretically some of those terms, and as mentioned, there is much more dissonance and also accidentals. But it's also put into a traditional simple form, so it's sort of this A, B, A altered kind of shape. It also asks for the use of pedal, so at first it says with pedal, so that's something for students to practice. I think this will teach discretion and learning how to make tasteful decisions, because the pedal markings are not listed throughout. So you'll kind of have to guide the student through where do you want to change it, but also the aesthetic is different. So you kind of want the sonorities to blend a little bit. Also in the B section, the una quarter pedal is also listed as optional. So if you wanted to, you can also be teaching how to use that pedal as well. And other things that are useful in this piece, we have some changing meter. It's not all changing every single measure, but we see differences in between sections, and that will be good to learn to adjust to. And there's tempo changes, not severe tempo changes, very subtle, and that kind of goes with the change of character. But this is a change of character as well as dynamics within a soft, calm range. So most of the dynamics are within pianissimo and mezzo piano, but they are very varied. So I think it's really a great piece. It's really charming. So let's listen to it. Thank you.